All right, welcome to week 10 here. This is our first lecture. It's on keys, constraints, and intro to queries. The intro to queries part's going to be a pretty much of a review of what we've already been doing with the SQL lectures. But let's go ahead and hop into it here. So let's start about keys and constraints. Let's start over by talking about the primary key. That's one we know really well. The primary key can be a field or a combination of fields. Each key is going to give you a unique value. So that's the thing. The primary key designates each row as unique. So the primary keys all have to be unique. They're used to identify a particular row in a table, and they're used to set up relationships between rows in different tables as a foreign key. Okay. Most important thing to remember though with primary keys is they cannot be duplicates. So you can't have any duplicate primary keys, and they can't be null. Every row, the primary key must be populated. All right. Primary keys can't solve everything alone. Does this primary key right here guarantee unique record and table? Yes. Does the primary key guarantee that each teacher only has one record in the table? No. The processes around using databases are critical. So we've got a teacher's name being used twice here in the system, which we didn't want, but we were relying on the primary key. We gave them a new primary key. So we effectively have a same teacher with two different IDs, which definitely don't want that. And that would not work. So do you want an ID number or do you want a concatenated key? So like in the example here, we've got a single ID number in this table here for the table V1, paddock table V1 here. We've got a set, we're using just the paddock number. For the farm table, we're using just a single number there. And we're using in here a concatenated one in the lookup table, or the transitional table you can put together. And again, you can do this. This is perfectly legal. The only reason I warn against it, especially in a class like this, is it's much easier to set up a foreign key primary key relationship on only single columns. And for the simplicity of the design, I would say that, but just know that you can absolutely use more than one column as your primary key combination. All right, so if you look over here on the left at the single foreign key, we're using the paddock number here as our table. And each paddock number is unique. As your table grows, you're going to have large values for paddock number that don't really mean much, but it doesn't matter. I mean, think of serialized numbers and stuff we use. Your driver's license number, your G number at school here. Being big doesn't really matter. And it's easy to use a primary key as a foreign when you're connecting to a foreign key when you only have one. Over here, we're using a combination. So you know that we got farm 1, and then we have paddock 1 and 2. Then we have farm 2, and we have paddock 1 and 2. So if farm 1 got another paddock, you'd have another line 1 and 3. So you can combine these two as a concatenated primary key. It might be more meaningful to look at to see. You can really quickly look at that and see how many paddock numbers are in there, but that's using the Excel thought process to build a database. The truth is, if you want to know how many paddocks are in there, you just really simply, you would just do a group by on your select statement. You wouldn't need to worry about that. So yes, again, you can use it and you can try to make your numbers meaningful. I don't think that there's a lot of value in that in most use cases. Just let your ID be your ID. It doesn't matter. It's not, a lot of times when you print out your results, you're querying your results, you don't even have the ID in the results. You just are looking for other information, okay? So you can also place unique constraints so that, beyond just the primary key, you can put a unique constraint on a table saying that, hey, I don't want this combination of information to appear more than once. Same thing. We looked up and we had the one with the teacher. you know, we had this right here. A unique constraint would keep you from being able to do this. You would not be able to enter the same information twice into a column. So that's what unique constraints can allow you to do. And that goes beyond just what you would call your primary key. Unique constraints help with maintaining uniqueness for a set of fields that are not the primary key, and they're enforcing the one-to-one relation. So unique constraint here can be applied to captain member ID to prevent someone from being a captain on more than one team. That's like a constraint you can place across there, so you wouldn't allow duplicates in this column, and that's the unique constraint. And there's some other constraints and keys you can put on. You can deleting reference records. So you want to make sure that I can't delete something that's being used by another table. So I want you to imagine I go through and I delete Susan Jones from here, 19. So now I have what's called an orphan foreign key. So number 19 is captain member, and there is no one there. There is no 19 in this table. That's not good. That'll basically break your database, because now your joins aren't going to match you because now you're trying to match up against a primary key that doesn't exist. So what you can do is you can disallow delete from any table from the member table if it's being referenced here in another table out there. And this gets more and more complex when you have maybe 6 or 7 tables referencing each table. So you can nullify delete. If a member is deleted who's referenced in the team table, you can set them to null. So you can have a trigger that sets that says, if I delete Susan Jones, then this will become null. And cascade delete. If a member row is deleted, then what you'll set it to is that all the rows they're attached to will get deleted as well. Okay? So again, let's look at the options here. First option is don't allow any deletes. If I'm looking here and I say I want to delete the first row, John Smith here, 18, it's going to look through the tables that are connected and say, is there an 18? If there's no 18, it's going to allow me to delete it. If there is an 18, I won't be allowed to delete it. I can nullify the delete. So if I do delete this, where it's referenced, this will become null. This 18 over here, the foreign key will become null. And I can do a cascade delete, which would delete this record, and then it would go through and it would delete this record as well. Okay? So that's some basic ideas with constraints. The main idea is that the constraints go past just your primary key. And, just think about, you got to think about what is impacted if you make a change. And this really is important kind of in the design phase when you're adding new columns and going around and changing. Always look at how down the line that change is going to affect things. Okay. All right, now let's hop over to query basics. Like I say, this should now be kind of a review for you guys because you've been doing some SQL queries already. So queries are used to ask questions of the data stored in your database. Basic queries have 2 required components, the select and the from. Okay, select defines what fields you want returned, from which table you're getting your data from. So we can ask, what are all the values for student ID that exist in the student table? So you could do this query here, select student ID from student, that would return this column right here. Return all of them because we didn't put any kind of constraints in there. If I want the values for the student ID, last name, first name exist, I'd put them here. And keep in mind, you can put them in different order too. If I want to put first name first and last name after that, just because the order they're in the table is not the order they have to come out in. And also remember that in the select clause, we have the star is our wild card, okay? So if we just do select star, it just grabs all the columns. We don't have to do anything else. It just gives us back the table, which we have in here. So you can see that in query 3 here, the select star returns all the values, and you want here's the as. Okay, we know this is aliasing here. So what this does is when it comes out, it doesn't come out saying student ID, it comes out saying student ID with a space, it comes out saying first name, last name without the underscore. So that's just, keep in mind, aliasing is just how your results will look. It does not change what's on the table. Okay. Uh, the brackets are being put up because there's a space, and that's just a rule. Because what happens if it's SQL sees a space, it thinks that's the next command. It doesn't realize that you're still stringing in one column. They see a space, they think you're going on to the next word. Again, with the labs, this should all be reviewed, you guys. This one shouldn't be anything new. Queries are used to ask questions. But this is a duplicate slide here. All right, so number 5 here, what are the results of the students? If you want the students who are from Bridgewater, now we're going to put in what's called the where clause. The where clause is added after select from. And remember, order is important. It goes select from, then where. And city is Bridgewater. Remember, you got to put quotes, single quotes around there because it's a string. If it was a number, you would not need quotes, but because it's a string. So the where clause, and again, we've gone over this before, this is basically a filtering thing, okay? Now we can get Bridgewater or Newark. So a couple options you can do here is number 1, where city equals Bridgewater or city equals Newark. I don't believe you need to have these around here. I think you can get rid of those brackets there, but you would put that on there if I had more than one qualifier in there. If I wanted to say where city is Bridgewater and name is Linda, or city is Newark. That's what, but I don't think you wouldn't really need the parentheses around here. The other option is you can use the in statement. The in statement, you can just open up parentheses and comma separate some values. You can also use the not in. If you write not in, it would look for everything that wasn't Newark or Bridgewater, okay? You can use and statements. We did an or before. So if you know that happens, we get the or, and that gives us and statements. It's got to be from Bridgewater and the degree has to be economics. And again, I think these parentheses are not necessary, but it's not going to hurt to have them, let's put it that way. All right, so let's kind of review. We've got the select clause, that's the field you want, the from clause, the table you want, the where clause, after the from, you can use it to restrict your results, filter basically. And there's an order by clause of which you can order your results. Okay, order by will return in order, first last name, and then first name, so that's how they'll go. So if you have these 3 Smiths here, it's going to, all the Smiths, then it should be the first one should be Allison, John, and James. Your ascending is by default. So it's going to order going up. So it's going to start at 1 up or A and go up. Descending, if you want to go backwards, you'll just type in DESC after the order by. That'll just put them in descending order for you. Again, we've done this in our labs already, so something you should be familiar with. And there we go. We have it. There's the descending. First enrolled descending, then we have last name, first name. And you can actually, you could have last name ascending, first name descending. You can do them in as many in order as you want, and there are times when that's come in handy. But that's pretty much it for that. So we've got one of our key constraints and query basics. Next, I'll have the SQL lecture, and we'll see you next class. Thank you.